Just hours ago, the House panel on constitutional amendments passed a resolution that would amend the Constitution's economic provisions.
64 lawmakers approved resolution of both houses number 2, but they dropped a proposal that gives foreigners rights to own land in the Philippines. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. House lawmakers are now eyeing plenary deliberations on the economic Chia-cha by the middle of this month.
But will this attempt to amend the Constitution see the light of day, or will it fail just like those before it? Ria Fernandez with The Big Story.
With a vote of 64 yeses, 3 noes, and 3 abstains, the House panel on constitutional amendments approved a resolution seeking to amend the 1987 Constitution. It has been 34 years to this day since the supreme law of the land was ratified.
Congratulations. Happy Constitution Day to all of you.
The resolution of both houses number 2, filed by Speaker Lord Velasco, will tinker with the supposedly restrictive economic provisions of the Constitution. Using the phrase unless otherwise provided by law, Congress arrogates itself the freedom to tinker with the Constitution with a simple majority vote. Former Supreme Court Associate Justice Adolfo Ascuna had earlier reminded lawmakers to be cautious with this move.
The phrase, unless otherwise provided by law, must be strategically located so that what is restricted and what the restriction that is removed is only the flexible portion of the policy and not the permanent protective principle. For instance, the principle that we should protect our marine life, our marine territories.
But not all proposals under the resolution made it past the committee. The panel dropped the proposal allowing foreigners to own private land in the country. This follows the motion of Committee Vice Chairperson Lawrence Defensor. On One News program The Chiefs, economist Winnie Monsod says charter change will not necessarily boost foreign direct investments in the country.
No, they won't come here unless the investment climate is right. And right now, the investment climate is not right.
Attorney Christian Monsod, one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution, is certain Chia-cha won't prosper at the Senate.
Mukhang hindi lang sila nagkakasundo sa semantics pero mukhang otherwise good to go silang dalawa.
You want to bet that they need 18 votes, by the way.
Opo.
You want to bet they won't make 18?
Oh, really? You think so? Because there seems to be unanimity already.
Yeah?
Yes, well,
At least
that is how
leadership.
it appears to most, no? Yeah.
A bottle of wine.
Oh, okay.
Panel Chairperson Alfredo Garbin Jr. says they target to set the resolution for plenary debates mid-February. They intend to vote separately from the Senate. That means 3/4, or 225 representatives, have to vote yes to adopt the proposed Chia-cha in the lower chamber. Rizal Representative Jack Duavit, who also heads the Nationalist People's Coalition in the House, is optimistic that Chia-cha will hurdle the plenary.
You take it one step at a time. And that's why we deliberate. No? But do I think we can get the 3/4 vote dito sa House? Yes, I think so.
But he noted there might be changes in the current form of the proposed amendments. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, we are One News.
And these are the other big stories today. Meat dealers and retailers are being given a 7-day grace period to recover capital from existing stock. The Agriculture Department says the price cap on pork and chicken across the metro begins February 8. After backlash from motorist, transportation authorities now agree a deferment of the implementation of the child car seat law is in order. They first want a comprehensive information campaign on the new measure. And finally, oral arguments on the controversial Anti-Terrorism Act has pushed through. Associate Justice Marvic Leonen is questioning the maturity of the 37 petitions against the measure. In his weekly late-night address, President Duterte is claiming that the European Union is holding AstraZeneca's vaccines hostage. Will this affect the Philippines' procurement of millions of doses from the British-Swedish drug maker? Maricel Halili tells us.
For all of the bruhaha. Oh, mayroon kami dito, nakita, mayroon saan? Yung AstraZeneca, hinostage ng European Union.
In his public address last night, President Duterte claimed that the EU has adopted a new mechanism blocking the export of AstraZeneca's shots to non-EU members. The British-Swedish drug maker last week announced a shortfall in its promised doses to the regional bloc. The new target of 40 million doses for March is only half of what had been hoped for.
The European Union has voiced concerns that vaccines could not be sent abroad before companies fulfilling obligations in their bloc. Ganong kadali. Ang atin dito, ASEAN, but we are not really as powerful as the EU.
Aside from 117,000 doses of Pfizer, 5.5 to 9.2 million doses of AstraZeneca's jabs are expected to be distributed in the Philippines via the COVAX facility. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. is unsure if this will come from the plant in Europe. But what's certain, Galvez says, is that the bloc's decision will not affect the AstraZeneca doses procured by the private sector and the local government.
Nakita natin talaga na they are haggling for supply. Pero sa atin po, wala tayong problema dahil kasi yung supply po natin ay galing po sa plant ng Thailand at saka meron po tayong another plant sa Serum Institute of India na pwede po natin magkaroon ng tinatawag na tie-up. And possibly, doon po ma-resolve yung logistical requirement po natin. So wala po tayong problema.
A tranche of Pfizer vaccines from COVAX facility is expected to arrive in the country by mid-February, while AstraZeneca's vaccines are expected to be delivered by the first and second quarter of this year. Of the 7 pharmaceutical companies under negotiation with the government, Galvez says 5 have already signed the term sheets. He did not identify the firms due to existing agreements. What this means is that the government has already locked in about 106 to 108 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, including those that require only a single shot. Once all deals are sealed, about 146 to 148 million doses are expected to be secured for the country. This is on top of the supply that the country is set to receive from COVAX. Galvez adds that donated vaccines from Chinese Sinovac may also be transported to the country anytime once it secures approval from the Food and Drug Administration. If all goes according to plan, these vaccines can cover more than 70 million Filipinos, or about 100% of the adult population. For News 5, Maricel Halili, we are One News.
New COVID cases worldwide appear to have dipped for the third straight week. To date, Johns Hopkins University has recorded about 103.4 million cases and 2.23 million deaths globally. The New York Times interactive tracking shows a downward trend in new infections and fatalities. The World Health Organization is welcoming the encouraging news, noting that the new virus can be controlled even with the new variants in circulation. In another briefing, the WHO has commended the Philippines for its COVID response.
You have used the lockdowns to build your healthcare capacity, your contact tracing and management. You have established TTMFs. All this shows that you have prepared and used the lockdowns wisely to deal with the pandemic.
The country has so far tallied 11,000 fatalities. Health Secretary Francisco Duque says the country's recovery rate is at 92%, while hospital utilization is at 45%.
Time for an express look at some of the day's big stories. Drivers will not be required to wear face masks inside their vehicles when traveling alone. Speaking to 1PH sa Totoo Lang, Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles says the DOH has already made statements exempting solo drivers from the required use of face masks inside vehicles. He agrees, though, that there may be a need to put it into writing to avoid confusion. Philippine Airlines will lay off about 2,300 employees, or a third of its workforce, by mid-March. The flag carrier says that while air travel is slowly returning, operations are still far from pre-pandemic levels. The retrenchment program has been announced as early as October. It includes both voluntary and involuntary separation. Beginning today, saliva testing collection sites are now open in SM Mall of Asia and SM Mega Mall. The Philippine Red Cross has partnered with the SM Group for the drop-off sites. The collected samples will then be forwarded to Red Cross laboratories for testing. PRC Chairman Senator Dick Gordon says the saliva test is currently priced at 2,000 pesos. Let's go for a quick break. When we come back, the Transportation Department backs the delaying of the full implementation of the child car seat law. But that's not the only thing getting delayed. The Agriculture Department has given a 7-day grace period before the price ceiling on meat products takes effect. The details later.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. Transportation authorities insist the implementing rules and regulations of the child car seat law were not rushed, but while they are defending the measure, they are at least open to deferring its full rollout. Why is that? Gerard de la Peña explains.
The Transportation Department and the Land Transportation Office are now keen on deferring the full implementation of the Child Safety in Motor Vehicles Law. The agencies cite the current economic situation amid the still raging pandemic. They also want a comprehensive campaign on the measure. Motorists took to social media to staunchly oppose what they call the sudden implementation of the Child Safety in Motor Vehicles Act. One Twitter user said it'll just be another cause of red tape, as the government is mandated to approve which car seat is appropriate for use. Another netizen complained that the implementation was done in haste. In defense, the Transportation Department said Republic Act 1129 has passed the year-long transitory period, having been signed into law in February 2019. The agency also denied that the laws implementing rules and regulations were rushed.
In fact, yung IRR po na yan is a product of multi-sectoral collaboration. So may mga kasali po dyan na national government agencies, civil society organizations, may mga private sectors din po.
The Land Transportation Office will not be issuing violation tickets yet to give private vehicle owners ample time to comply.
Sana po mawala yung pangamba na kaagad ang hahanapin dito yung lumalabag at i-issue ng ticket at re-require na magbayad ng penalty or what. Ang ginagawa po natin ngayon, pinapalawak pa natin ang kaalaman ng madla at kung sakaling may makikita pong lumalabag dito, pinapaalalahanan lang.
Meanwhile, road safety advocates support the implementation of the new law.
You have to realize that, yun nga masakit niyan, kumisan, at kailangan ma-involve pa muna sa aksidente para makita yung halaga noong car seat. Dahil hindi naman yan kapritso lang, kundi talaga para sa kaligtasan ng bata na nakasakay sa loob ng sasakyan niya.
Entrepreneur Lloyd Del Castillo bought a car seat 2 years ago for his daughter. He said it was worth it even if it cost him about 9,000 pesos at the time.
Minsan may check-up or pupunta sa school, so toddler na kasi ang anak ko makakapag-drive ako mag-isa pag naka-seatbelt siya. Kahit na medyo hindi siya comfortable dun sa seat, makakapag-drive naman ako ng maayos. Alam kong safe yung bata.
The law only covers private vehicles so far. The DOTR says they are doing a feasibility study on how this can also be implemented in public vehicles. For News 5, Gerard De La Peña, We Are One News.
Pork and chicken retailers say they may either be forced to close shop or simply defy a price ceiling order to avert potential losses. They now have 7 days before any price freeze is implemented. Shaila Francisco with a big story.
The Agriculture Department has deferred the implementation of a price cap on pork and chicken in wet markets across Metro Manila. The DA says the 60-day price cap will instead be implemented beginning February 8. The 7-day grace period was given to allow meat dealers and retailers to adjust and recover their capital from the existing inventory.
Parang ating mga meat dealers din po, they will be able to dispose of the meat that they bought at 285 pesos, yes. Diba? So by the time matapos ang ating grace period, nakabili na sila ng mas murang carcass. With that, bababa na rin po ang presyo ng kasim tsaka liempo sa palengke.
The move comes after retailers admitted that they won't be able to comply with the order. Some retailers are considering to close their shops instead of operating at a loss, while others are planning to defy the order.
Baka bukas makalawa, tigil na kung talagang hindi uubre. Diba mahinga muna kami kaysa malugi kami.
Hindi namin susundin yung 160 kasi namumuhunan kami ng 160. Opo. Hindi naman kami overpricing.
Kung anong presyo ng dadasaro namin sa kinukuha namin baboy, basta kami hindi kanya bababa. Magtinda pa rin kami, ganun pa rin yung presyo namin.
Even traders and dealers are looking at halting the transport of meat products in Metro Manila.
Nag-usap kami mga traders, mga biyahero, kami mga taga-slaughterhouse, o sige, ubusin na lang natin itong stock natin, stop na muna tayo sa biyahe.
Both retailers and traders say they will only be able to comply with the order if farm gate prices are lowered. In response, chicken and pork producers say high production costs are making it hard for them to adjust farm gate prices. Producers say for now, the acceptable price cap for chicken should be at 180 pesos and the suggested retail price of 330 to 360 pesos for pork. If not, pork producers fear there might be a shortage of pork in Metro Manila, which will further increase prices.
Okay, kung linggong ito, sigurado mararamdaman yan pagka yung presyo niyon susundin. Sino magbibintang retailer? Sino trader sa magbibiyay sa inyo? Papuntang Metro Manila. Tapos, parusa ngayon sa magbababoy. Lahat magbabawas ng alaga. Baka lalong mawala ng supply ng baboy ang Metro Manila.
To assist retailers, the DA says it will subsidize logistics to lower transport costs during the 60-day price cap. They are also open to the Trade Department's proposal to impose a price cap on wholesalers and traders. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From PhilStar, fewer water birds are seen in Manila Bay, according to a bird-watching group. In its 2021 census, the Wild Bird Club of the Philippines tallied 110,000 water birds, 25,000 short of 2019's figures. The group attributes the decline to the loss of feeding habitats, which are mostly being turned into commercial areas. Moody's Analytics downgrades its growth projection for the country this year. From its 6.2% forecast last November, Moody's now expects a 4 to 5% growth, much lower than the government's 6.5 to 7.5 target. Business World reports that Moody's considers the lack of fiscal support and the uncertainty surrounding vaccine acquisition for the downgrade. And some reprieve, Meralco customers with unsettled bills will not face disconnection just yet. In an interview with Radyo 5, Meralco's Joe Zaldarriaga says they may exercise leniency for those who can't afford their outstanding balance. But Zaldarriaga notes that it will be on a case-to-case basis. Meralco's no disconnection policy ended January 31, a month-long extension of the original December 31, 2020 deadline. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, as oral arguments on the Anti-Terror Act begins, one magistrate questions if the petitions are ripe enough. And 24 hours since the military took over in Myanmar, the whereabouts of state leader Aung San Suu Kyi remains unknown. More details next.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. The Supreme Court tackled oral arguments today against the controversial anti-terror law. We have Marlene Alcaide live at the Supreme Court in Manila to give us details. Marlene, what were the points raised in today's session?
Robbie, one of the highlights of today's oral argument was a throwback of the People Power Revolution in 1986. One of the petitioners argued that if the anti-terror law had been present then, the call for EDSA People Power would easily qualify as inciting terrorism. Petitioners have joined forces today to prove to the 15 magistrates of the Supreme Court that the anti-terror law should be struck down. Out of the 37 petitioners, only 7 representatives were allowed to enter the session hall to deliver their arguments before the justices. Among them is former Solicitor General Jose Anselmo Cadiz, who noted the imminent danger of the anti-terror law to constitutionally protected civil liberties. Cadiz stressed that instead of providing security, it will do more harm to civil liberties. Human rights lawyer Shel Jokno also told the Supreme Court that if the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 existed in 1986, Archbishop Cardinal Sin's call for people power would easily qualify as inciting to terrorism. Meanwhile, former Bayan Muna Representative Nery Colmenares told the High Court that no one should be punished by exercising their constitutional rights. Justice Marvic Leonen says he understands the fears of the petitioners because he himself experienced that when he was still a lawyer. He, however, says it would be better to question the law at the lower courts where evidence can be received. He also points out the lack of actual case among the petitions. Robbie, other petitioners insist that the listing provision in the anti-terror law is not enough. In fact, they argue that the listing isn't even in the law itself, only on the implementing rules. Meanwhile, oral arguments will continue Tuesday next week, where Solicitor General Jose Calida is expected to defend the anti-terror law. Robbie?
Maraming salamat, Marlene Alcaide, reporting live from Padre Faura in Manila.
Let's take a look at the world of sports. Things are moving along for Terrafirma superstar forward CJ Perez, who is now on his way to the San Miguel Beermen. The PBA Commissioner's Office approved his upcoming trade for 3 players and 2 first-round draft picks under San Miguel. The 3 Beermen to be added to Terrafirma Jeep's roster are Russell Escoto, Jello Alolino, and Matt Ganuela's roster. Perez spent 2 seasons with Terrafirma, where he won Rookie of the Year in 2019. After a long wait due to travel restrictions, 18-year-old Filipino NBA prospect Kai Soto is set to arrive in the country tonight. Soto is expected to reinforce Gilas Pilipinas in the upcoming FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers this month. In an online forum earlier today, Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas Al Panlilio says Soto will be a great addition to the team. But Panlilio asked supporters to take it easy on the 7'3" center.
Everybody, so just 18. So we can't also put too much pressure on him. We would, he's the future of Philippine basketball for sure. But he's also developing as a player, as a person.
And in entertainment, Brillante Mendoza's Mindanao made it to the list of films qualified for consideration at the Oscars. It's one of 93 entries longlisted for the International Feature Film category of the 93rd Academy Awards. Mindanao follows the story of a Muslim mother played by Judy Ann Santos. In the film, she takes care of her cancer-stricken daughter while awaiting for her husband, played by Alan Dizon, to return from war. The shortlist for the Oscars will be released on February 9, while nominations will be announced on March 15.
In Myanmar, the whereabouts of elected State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi remained largely unknown more than 24 hours since the military seized power and detained her and other officials. But the Financial Times report says she is currently under house arrest. The report, which cites 2 persons privy to the information, said Suu Kyi is detained by the military in her house in Myanmar's capital, Yangon. According to Reuters, her last communication was a written statement in anticipation of the coup, called for protests against the military dictatorship. Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy is demanding her immediate release. And while the turmoil in Myanmar was starting to take shape yesterday, one fitness teacher happened to be in the heat of things while doing her dance routine. In a now viral workout video, King Min Wai, in full workout gear and face mask, was pumped up for her routine just outside the Parliament building. Little did King know that as she vibed with the upbeat music, armed vehicles were already approaching the barricaded entrance. Never mind the coup, the fitness teacher carried on with her dance. King even recalls some military officials smiling at her.
That's definitely historic. Can you do that?
I don't know. I don't know if I could ignore a whole convoy of military vehicles passing me.
I will do that if it will ease tensions.
Actually, convoy or not, I can't do that.
And that wraps up today's big story. I'm Gretchen Ho. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Good evening.